Hi, my name is Lexi Riggs, and I am head of revenue operations at Vercel. I am so excited to be here at PLGTM. Thank you all for being here as well. And I'm really excited to talk about something that I'm really passionate about, which is the evolving role of RevOps at PLG companies. Over the next half hour, I kind of want to talk through a couple of topics. So what is revenue operations or RevOps? What role does RevOps play at PLG companies? How can RevOps help drive revenue growth? And then lastly, how does Vercel sell, or we like to say engage with developers? So a little bit of background about myself. I actually started my tech career as an SDR. So cold calls, sending emails, creating sequences, scrubbing data in the CRM. For someone who is an introvert, wasn't my favorite thing in the entire world. So I quickly found that I could consistently hit my quota by using data to target the exact person I wanted to be talking to. So I ended up doing the least amount of work possible and, again, still consistently hit my quota. The revenue operations team saw what I was doing and said, you might be a better fit over here with us. We're going to try to operationalize exactly what you're doing. And I haven't really looked back since. I have always operated in some form of operations role, whether that's sales operations, revenue operations, business operations. But revenue operations is really, really interesting because it's somewhat of a newer concept. In fact, over the last 2 years, there's been a 300% increase in revenue operations titles. But what is revenue operations? I think revenue operations and operations more generally can be a really nebulous thing. There are some days where I have a hard time explaining to people what I do on a day-to-day basis. Usually when I say I work in revenue operations, the conversation goes a little bit like this, where I say, yeah, revenue operations, and they say, oh, Salesforce, you do Salesforce. I'm like, well, sure, like, yes. But not quite. And then, oh, so you do sales operations? And again, my response is, well, a little bit, yeah, but there's more to it. And I'm usually just met with kind of like a blank, confused look. So, but the way that I really like to think about revenue operations is we are the revenue engine. So we make the thing go, the thing being go to market. You could have the most beautiful, well-crafted car in the entire world, but if it doesn't have a top-notch engine, it's not moving fast. So how do we do that, right? We create alignment across marketing and sales, customer success, and product. I think revenue operations is really interesting because you kind of have this aerial view of the funnel, right? Your job is to understand how something happening at the very top of the funnel impacts something at the very bottom of the funnel. We're always thinking about how the inputs affect the outputs. Because of this, I think revenue operations isn't just a support function, right? We're not here just to build reports for sellers, right? We are a critical part of go-to-market strategy, and we should be. So again, yes, of course, we are configuring systems, we are putting together processes, all of that kind of fun stuff. But at the end of the day, that's all just a byproduct of what our real goal is, which is to increase revenue, optimize revenue, and do so in a predictable way. Now, a couple of outputs, I would say, of like a high-functioning revenue operations team would be increased revenue, increased NDR, higher customer lifetime value, lower cost of acquisition. All of these things mean that you are getting revenue, increasing revenue, and doing so efficiently. But what does this look like at a product-led growth company? Because it is a little bit different. And I think before I dive into that, I do want to dispel a couple of misconceptions that I kind of see in the PLG world. I think the first one is that PLG is synonymous with self-serve, which in some regards it is. You have to have kind of that self-serve motion. However, the way that I like to think about it is product-led growth just means that we value the customer journey and we want to make it as frictionless as possible. So for me, I kind of like to think about it as customer-led growth. We let the customer get in the product, learn the product, understand the product, and grow with the product at their own pace. Now, I think because of this misconception, you will find that there is sometimes this friction between the self-serve motion and the sales motion. There always seems to be this constant push and pull between the two over which one's more important, which one gets more resources, which one we should prioritize. And in my mind, the answer is both. I think if you have a frictionless customer journey, this product-led growth should organically bleed into product-led sales. In this world, your sales team, your customer success team, your sales engineering team should all be there to just enhance the customer journey and potentially provide them with help along their way in a complex buying cycle, potentially. So back to the question at hand, how does RevOps work at a product-led growth company? Like I said, I'm still super focused on increasing revenue and optimizing revenue and doing so in a predictable way, but I am also heavily mindful of the customer experience as well. I want to cater to the customer experience. I think as we talked about a little bit earlier, RevOps is uniquely positioned to do this because we can see what is happening all the way at the start of the customer journey to the end of the customer journey in ways that other departments aren't. And they shouldn't have to be. So marketing, they should be focused on getting people in the door, getting them hooked on the product. Sales should be focused on providing that white glove service. And our customer success team should be focused on making sure the customer has the value that they're looking for from the product. Revenue operations' job is to make sure that all of these motions flow together seamlessly, both for internal stakeholders and external customers. Now, there are definitely challenges that come along with working in RevOps at a product-led growth company. Sometimes I like to think that product-led growth is a blessing and a curse to RevOps organizations everywhere. We have millions of contacts in our CRM. Millions of customers, users, people who have touched our product in some way, shape, or form. And that journey is not always linear, right? So RevOps' job is to ensure that we can kind of connect all of those dots and we can see the customer journey holistically. So the first big challenge here is getting visibility into customer data, right? And it sounds like it would be a really simple task, but it is very, very difficult. We have many different data sources. We have a lot of data that's not quite clean. We have data in all different sorts of formats. And getting that all in one place so you can see holistically who your customer is, what they are doing, and how we can make their experience better is exceedingly difficult. Now, once you have that data all in one place, which again, mentioned, this is not easy. RevOps' job is to ensure that it is actionable for our stakeholders. We need to be able to find where there are points of friction in the customer journey or areas of opportunity for growth within an account before the customer does. We don't want to be reactive, waiting for customers to reach out saying, hey, we need help here. We want to be proactive in making sure we're providing the customer with that frictionless journey. This is why tools like Topline are super helpful for us at Vercel. It helps us get all of our customer data in one place, aggregate it, see intent signals, and then be able to action them very, very quickly. I think we know, especially in the enterprise space, that there is a real need for speed and making sure your customers get what they need when they need it. I think the other big challenge that revenue operations teams face, as well as all companies, teams, orgs, human beings, is cross-functional collaboration, especially in this new remote world. Making sure that all of these different motions are on the same page when you guys aren't all in the same room is nearly impossible. I think, like I said before, RevOps is kind of uniquely positioned so that we can make sure that every different part of the funnel, every different team understands how what they're doing impacts another team. And that's challenging. That's challenging for RevOps teams to make sure that people have this level of visibility. But that's why it's so important to have access to this data and in a place where people can see it. A couple of other things that revenue operations teams kind of have to keep in mind in the PLG space. The buyer is not always the PQL. So the person who is actively using your product, the person who is excited about your product might not be the decision maker, especially in the enterprise space. I can't tell you how many times we have someone come and talk to our sales team saying, hey, we love your product, our team loves your product has changed my life, I would do anything for your product, but I don't make the decision. So revenue operations' job is to make sure we are connecting those dots, right? We have to make sure that our go-to-market team knows who they should be talking to, when they should be talking to them, and how they should be engaging with them. Similarly, with product-led growth or customer-led growth, this land and expand motion is exceedingly important. For customer-led growth or product-led growth, you want the customer to grow with your product and grow within your product. And so that means you sell them exactly what they need when they need it and hope that they organically grow with you. In order to do that, you have to be able to get this information to your go-to-market teams, again, so they can reach out to the customers proactively and make sure there is no friction in their journey. And lastly, I think selling in the dev tool space has a certain set of challenges in which you have to price based on the value that the developer gets. And I think that looks different across each one of our SKUs, which we'll dive into in a little bit. But you have to make sure that the business model caters to the developer audience. So this gets us into how does Vercel go to market? And for those of you that haven't heard of Vercel, Vercel is a front-end cloud that allows companies and developers to create a better web experience for their users. We've designed workflows and infrastructure in a way that it helps developers build a faster, more personalized web. The front-end cloud enables developers to focus their time and energy and their innovation on the front end instead of trying to stitch together a bunch of back-end tools. And because of this, this allows a better experience for both the developer and the end user. So how does Vercel go to market? We have 3 different ways that someone could potentially use our product. We have our hobby tier, which is freemium model. This is for the solo developer who wants to tinker around in your product. They maybe want to host their personal website, but they're not ready for all of the bells and whistles of Vercel. This is easy, it's free, and it's frictionless for a developer to come on board and start using. Second, we have our self-serve SKU, which we call Pro. And this is for your small teams, your small companies who are ready for some level of collaboration or workflow tooling, but maybe not ready for all of it. It's pay as you go, no pre-commit, your typical PLG model. And then we have our enterprise offering. And this is for customers who are ready to utilize the full benefit of the front-end cloud. This is usually larger customers who security is of the utmost importance. They might need some level of support from our customer success team or our sales team or our solutions team. But this is a fully customizable plan for these bigger companies, whether that is a high velocity sales assist or it is the full white glove experience. We want to ensure we're getting the customer exactly what they want. All right, so the nuances of selling to developers. And I say selling because developers do not want to be sold to. They do not want to be marketed to. They probably don't even really want to talk to you. So when you're engaging with them, you have to be very strategic in the way that you do that. The first one here is you have to lead with features and not the high-level impact. A developer, when you're speaking to them, if you're not speaking their language, if you're not telling them exactly how your product is going to benefit them, they're not going to listen to you. So for our sellers and our marketers, they really have to understand the pain that developers feel each and every day in order to sell a solution to them. As mentioned before, you may or may not be talking to a developer who is the buyer or the decision maker, and you have to cater your go-to-market motion for each of those personas. So secondly, they detest marketing. They really hate being sold to. They can sense BS from a mile away. They want honesty. They want authenticity. They want to know that you really care about them and what they're doing. And sometimes they don't even want to talk to you before they start working in the product. This is why PLG has had such success in the developer space, because it allows the product to do the talking for you. It allows the developer to tinker in your product, experience the product, and not have you tell them about the product. And then lastly, we have a lot of resources available for our developers and for our audience so that they're able to do this. They're able to get into the product and use it and understand it on their own terms. And we'll dive into that a little bit. All right, so first and foremost, get your developers in the product. Let them get in there, explore, see what you have to offer, tinker around in the product. This allows them to get a sense of what you're selling and what your product does, and it makes them organically grow with you. This is incredibly important in our go-to-market motion. We have a great product, and we think it speaks for itself, and this allows our developers to see that. Secondly, rich documentation is key. I think I've probably really drove this point home that developers don't want to talk to you. And so if they don't want to talk to you, they want to do this all on their own. And there might be a point where they're in your product, they're tinkering around, and they might run into something that they can't quite grok. Now, we have an entire team of support engineers who are there to help and support developers in any way they can, but sometimes developers just, again, don't want to talk to you. So we want to make sure that they have every single resource they need so they can troubleshoot themselves. And this is where the rich documentation comes into play. I think the other thing is having a support team and having to go to them and submit a support ticket, wait for a response, implement the feedback, it creates friction in their customer journey. And that is something that we don't want if we want these people to continue to grow with our product. So rich documentation has been incredibly important to us in our journey. Third, how we engage with our developers, we have to be very, very mindful in how we do that. We only want to deliver high value content to our developers. Every month we send a product newsletter that kind of showcases new features, new product launches, something that's coming up down the road, anything that we think the developer will find important. We have found that developers do not want to sift through a bunch of fluff, right? They want you to get straight to the point. They want you to deliver value, and they want it to be on their own terms. They want you to meet the developer where they're at. So for our marketing team, we have to deliver that high value content directly to them. So we actually have incredibly high engagement rates on our emails because our users know that if we are sending something, it is very important for them to read because we don't send anything often. And lastly, we really invest in our open source community. I think the best example of this is our conference that we hold every year called Next.js Conf. In fact, our Next.js Conf in 2022 had over 100,000 online registrants to attend. These have been a huge success for Vercel and the Next.js community. Investing in this community, investing in this open source community, talking directly to the developers have helped us continue to foster this just wonderful sense of community that we have in the developer community. So this has been extremely important to us in our go-to-market motion. So in summary, product-led growth, to me, it's not necessarily synonymous with self-serve. It means that we value our customer and their journey and using the product on their own terms. And I think RevOps plays a huge role in that. RevOps has to be that strategic partner, the glue between the PLG and the PLS, product-led sales motion. We are responsible for getting that visibility into what the customer is doing and who they are, and ensuring that we are finding friction in the product before the customer does, and we address it. And lastly, in the spirit of customer-led growth, we always want to meet the developer where they're at in their journey, and we want to be extremely mindful in the way we communicate with them. And most importantly, we want them to use the product because we think the product speaks for itself, and they get to see the magic on their own terms. All right, well, thank you for listening to me talk all about RevOps.